In the vast expanse of the cosmos, where stars shimmered like diamonds scattered across an endless velvet canvas, there existed a universe teeming with life and wonder. Among its countless planets, one stood out, a world known as Xyura, home to an advanced civilization of beings who seemed to embody both grace and power. The people of Xyura were not human but shared a striking resemblance in form, their skin shimmering faintly with hues that shifted like liquid light. Their eyes held galaxies within them, irises swirling with colors no mortal brush could replicate. Among these extraordinary beings was Princess Xyura, the crown jewel of her realm. She was revered not only for her beauty but also for her wisdom and courage. Her presence commanded respect, her voice carried authority softened by compassion. Yet beneath her regal exterior lay a heart burdened by duty. As heir to the throne, she bore the weight of safeguarding her people from threats both internal and external, a responsibility that left little room for personal desires or freedom. Far away from Xyura's shimmering skies, on Earth, a planet still grappling with its own chaos, lived Marcus Kane, a soldier hardened by years of service. His journey had been anything but ordinary. Orphaned at a young age, he grew up under the care of foster families who struggled to understand his quiet intensity. Life had taught him early on that trust was a luxury few could afford, and so he learned to rely solely on himself. When war called, Marcus answered without hesitation, finding solace in the structure and discipline of military life. He became skilled, fearless, and relentless, a protector forged in fire. Though separated by unimaginable distances and worlds apart in origin, fate had already begun weaving threads between the princess and the soldier. Neither knew it yet, but their paths would soon collide in ways neither could have anticipated. While Xyura navigated court intrigues and cosmic diplomacy, Marcus fought battles on foreign soil, driven by a sense of purpose he couldn't fully articulate. Both lived lives defined by sacrifice, though their struggles seemed incomparable. Yet deep down, they shared something profound, a longing for connection, a yearning to believe that somewhere in the vastness of existence, someone might see them not just as titles or roles but as individuals worth saving. It all began during what should have been a routine diplomatic mission. Princess Xyura, accompanied by a small entourage of advisors and guards, traveled aboard her sleek starship to negotiate peace between two warring factions on a distant moon. The journey itself was uneventful, the hum of engines blending seamlessly with the quiet murmurs of strategy sessions. But as they approached their destination, disaster struck without warning. A rogue asteroid field, undetected by even the most advanced sensors, sent shards of rock hurtling toward the ship. Alarms blared, lights flickered, and chaos erupted as the vessel's shields failed under the barrage. Xyura found herself thrown violently against the bulkhead, her body bruised but intact. Around her, panic reigned. The once pristine corridors were now littered with debris, smoke curling through the air like ghostly tendrils. Her guards scrambled to protect her, but their efforts were futile against the mounting destruction. One by one, systems failed, leaving them adrift in the void of space. With communications down and oxygen levels dwindling, hope seemed lost. That was when he appeared, or rather, his voice did. Over the dying intercom, a calm, steady tone cut through the static. "This is Commander Marcus Kane of Earth Expeditionary Forces. We've detected your distress signal." The words felt surreal, spoken in accented galactic standard, a language rarely mastered by humans. For a moment, Xyura thought she imagined it, a trick of her oxygen-starved mind, but then came the sound of thrusters roaring outside the hull. Through cracked viewports, she caught sight of a battered human fighter craft maneuvering deftly among the asteroids, its pilot weaving through danger with precision born of experience. The rescue operation unfolded with breathtaking speed. Marcus's ship deployed magnetic tethers, latching onto the damaged royal vessel and pulling it clear of the asteroid field. Explosions lit up the darkness as stray rocks collided with each other, but Marcus remained focused, guiding both ships toward safety. Inside, Xyura clung to consciousness, her ears straining to hear every word transmitted over the comms. His voice never faltered, even when alarms screamed warnings about fuel reserves running dangerously low. It wasn't until the last tether locked into place and the asteroid storm faded behind them that he finally allowed himself a breathless laugh. "You're safe now," he said simply, his voice tinged with exhaustion, and something else. Determination? Relief? She couldn't be sure. As the immediate threat subsided, Xyura demanded visual contact. The screen flickered to life, revealing a face she would never forget. His features were rugged, marked by scars that spoke of battles fought and survived. Dark eyes met hers, sharp and assessing, yet softened by an unexpected warmth. There was no arrogance in his gaze, no demand for recognition or reward, only quiet resolve. And then, just as quickly as he had arrived, Marcus severed the connection, disappearing back into the void before Xyura could utter a single word of gratitude. All that remained was the memory of those eyes, and the lingering feeling that somehow, impossibly, this stranger had seen straight through her royal facade to the fragile soul beneath. Back on Xyura, life resumed its usual rhythm, though Xyura found herself unable to shake the image of the human soldier who had saved her. Days turned into weeks, and still, his face haunted her thoughts. Not just his appearance, but the way he carried himself, the steadiness in his voice, the unspoken promise that he would do whatever it took to protect others. She tried to bury these musings beneath the weight of her responsibilities, immersing herself in council meetings and ceremonial duties, but they persisted like whispers in the night. One evening, as she gazed out from her private balcony overlooking the luminous cityscape below, a sudden realization struck her. Those eyes, they weren't unfamiliar. They reminded her of fleeting glimpses she'd caught during moments of peril before, shadows that flitted at the edges of her awareness. Could it be possible? Had he been watching over her long before their encounter in the asteroid field? The idea seemed absurd, almost poetic, yet it refused to leave her mind. Determined to uncover the truth, Xyura delved into classified archives, searching for any mention of Earth expeditionary forces operating near Xyloran territory. What she discovered astonished her. Reports of unidentified vessels intervening in conflicts involving her people stretched back years. Each time, the intervention was subtle, precise, leaving no trace beyond whispers among survivors. In one instance, a rebel faction targeting royal supply lines had mysteriously disbanded after key leaders vanished without explanation. Another report detailed how a malfunctioning orbital station had been stabilized mere seconds before catastrophic failure, all thanks to an unknown savior who vanished as swiftly as they arrived. As Xyura pieced together these fragments, a pattern emerged. Every act of salvation bore the unmistakable mark of skill and timing that matched Marcus's actions during their recent encounter. Her chest tightened with each revelation, a mix of awe and disbelief coursing through her veins. This man, this human, had risked everything repeatedly, not for glory or gain, but because it was simply what he did. And somehow, despite the vast distance between their worlds, he had chosen her to protect. Her hands trembled as she closed the final dossier, staring blankly at the glowing screen. The implications overwhelmed her. If Marcus truly was behind these interventions, then his role in her life extended far beyond the asteroid field. He wasn't merely a rescuer, he was a guardian, silent and steadfast, standing in the shadows while she remained unaware. The thought ignited something deep within her, a spark of gratitude that bordered on reverence. She had always believed herself capable of handling danger alone, relying on her training and title to shield her. But now, faced with evidence of his unseen presence, she felt vulnerable in a way she hadn't anticipated. Someone had been watching over her all along, someone willing to step into harm's way without hesitation. And she didn't even know his name until recently. 4 days afterward, Xyura wrestled with conflicting emotions. Gratitude warred with frustration, at herself for needing protection, at him for remaining anonymous for so long. Yet beneath it all simmered a growing curiosity. Who was this man, really? Why had he dedicated himself to safeguarding her, a princess from another galaxy? The questions gnawed at her relentlessly, driving her to seek answers, even if it meant stepping outside the boundaries of protocol and tradition. Meanwhile, light years away, Marcus Kane sat alone in the dim confines of his quarters aboard the Earth expeditionary flagship. The rescue mission that had brought him face to face with Princess Xyura replayed endlessly in his mind, each detail etched vividly into his memory. He hadn't meant to let her see him, hadn't intended for their paths to cross so directly. Years of covert operations had taught him the value of invisibility, the importance of staying in the shadows where his actions could speak louder than words. But something about her had pierced through his carefully constructed walls, a vulnerability hidden beneath layers of strength and authority. Her eyes, wide with fear yet resolute, had lingered in his thoughts long after their brief exchange ended. He told himself it was nothing more than adrenaline, the natural high that followed a successful mission. But deep down, he knew better. This wasn't the first time he'd encountered her, though it was certainly the closest. Over the years, he'd intervened whenever intelligence suggested her safety was at risk, neutralizing threats before they materialized, ensuring her survival without ever revealing his presence. It wasn't part of his official orders. No commanding officer had tasked him with protecting a distant alien princess. Yet something about her drew him in, compelling him to act even when logic dictated otherwise. Perhaps it was the stories he'd heard during his deployments, tales of her wisdom and bravery whispered among diplomats and soldiers alike. Or maybe it was simpler than that, a gut instinct telling him she mattered, not just to her people but to something greater he couldn't quite define. Now, their connection felt undeniable, unavoidable. Her voice still echoed in his ears, soft but commanding, carrying an undertone of gratitude that made his chest ache. For years, he'd convinced himself that anonymity was best, that his role was to serve silently and disappear. But seeing her face, hearing her acknowledge his existence, even indirectly, had shattered that illusion. She knew him now, at least partially. And though he tried to push the thought aside, he couldn't deny the pull he felt toward her. It wasn't just admiration or hero worship, it was deeper, more primal. A need to ensure she was safe, to stand beside her rather than watch from afar. Marcus clenched his fists, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. He was a soldier, trained to follow orders and prioritize the mission above all else. Yet here he was, consumed by thoughts of a woman he barely knew, questioning every decision he'd ever made. Was it selfish to want more? To wish for a chance to meet her again, not as a shadowy savior but as an equal? He shook his head, trying to dispel the notion. Such desires were dangerous, bordering on reckless. Still, as he stared at the holographic star map glowing faintly on his desk, tracing the route between Earth and Xyura, he couldn't help but wonder if fate had other plans for them. Maybe their paths crossing wasn't coincidence, but destiny nudging him toward something bigger, something he wasn't ready to name. Word of the mysterious rescuer reached the highest echelons of Xyloran society faster than Xyura anticipated. Rumors spread like wildfire, fueled by fragmented accounts from survivors of past crises who swore they'd glimpsed a figure cloaked in shadow, moving with purpose and precision. Some claimed it was a guardian spirit sent by the ancient deities, while others whispered of an off-world ally sworn to protect the royal bloodline. Whatever the truth, speculation ran rampant, igniting debates in court chambers and marketplaces alike. For Xyura, however, the attention was suffocating. Her counselors pressed her for answers, demanding to know why she hadn't disclosed such critical information sooner. "Princess," one elder admonished, his tone sharp with disapproval, "if this human has indeed been safeguarding you, we must extend formal recognition. An alliance with Earth could strengthen our defenses exponentially." Xyura bristled at the implication, her jaw tightening. They spoke of Marcus as though he were a tool to be wielded, a resource to exploit rather than a person who had risked everything for her sake. She wanted to defend him, to remind them that his actions were born of selflessness, not strategy. But how could she argue when she barely understood his motives herself? Public reaction proved equally overwhelming. Crowds gathered outside the palace gates daily, chanting prayers of gratitude to the shadow warrior who had kept their beloved princess safe. Artists painted murals depicting him as a towering figure clad in armor, his face obscured but his eyes aglow with determination. Children played games inspired by his exploits, imagining themselves as brave protectors fending off unseen dangers. While Xyura appreciated the sentiment, the idolization unsettled her. Marcus wasn't some mythical hero, he was flesh and blood, flawed and complex. Reducing him to legend stripped away the humanity that made his sacrifices meaningful. Amid the chaos, Xyura retreated further into solitude, seeking refuge in her private chambers. Yet even there, reminders of him lingered, in the faint hum of the security systems he'd unknowingly influenced, in the echoes of conversations dissecting his identity. She found herself questioning whether she deserved such devotion. After all, she hadn't asked for his protection, hadn't earned it through any act of her own. Guilt gnawed at her, tangled with gratitude and confusion. If she truly owed him her life, how could she ever repay him? And what would happen if the truth came to light, that the celebrated savior wasn't bound by duty or treaty but by something far more personal? As days passed, the pressure mounted. Advisors urged her to issue a formal statement, to acknowledge the debt Xyura owed to this enigmatic figure. Diplomats proposed sending emissaries to Earth to open negotiations, leveraging his deeds as a foundation for intergalactic cooperation. Xyura resisted, her instincts screaming that exposing Marcus would endanger him, and perhaps destroy the fragile connection they shared. But resistance came at a cost. Whispers of dissatisfaction rippled through the court, accusing her of withholding vital information for reasons unknown. Even her closest confidants began to question her judgment, their loyalty tested by uncertainty. Caught between gratitude and guilt, Xyura felt the weight of her position more acutely than ever before. The man who had saved her countless times deserved recognition, yes, but not at the expense of his freedom. How could she honor his sacrifices without betraying the very essence of what made them extraordinary? The answer eluded her, slipping through her grasp like water through cupped hands. All she knew was that silence couldn't last forever. Sooner or later, the truth would come to light, and when it did, she feared the consequences would ripple far beyond either of their worlds. The next chapter of their intertwined destinies unfolded unexpectedly, sparked by a seemingly innocuous diplomatic summit hosted on Earth. Representatives from dozens of planets convened in a sprawling orbital station orbiting the blue-green sphere, exchanging ideas and forging alliances under the watchful eye of humanity's leaders. Xyura attended reluctantly, her presence mandated by protocol rather than desire. Yet as she stepped onto the gleaming platform, her heart quickened, not because of the grandeur surrounding her, but because of the faint hope stirring within her chest. Somewhere among the bustling crowds, she sensed he might be. Her intuition proved correct sooner than she dared imagine. During a break in proceedings, she wandered away from the main hall, seeking solace in a quiet observation deck overlooking Earth's curvature. The sight took her breath away, swirling clouds painting the atmosphere in shades of white and gold, oceans stretching endlessly beneath them. Lost in the view, she didn't notice the figure approaching until his shadow fell across the floor. Turning sharply, she froze, her pulse racing as familiar dark eyes met hers. "Princess," Marcus said, his voice steady but tinged with surprise. He wore civilian attire, simple yet well-fitted, his scarred hands clasped loosely at his sides. His posture betrayed none of the tension radiating from him, though Xyura could feel it keenly. Up close, he seemed larger than she remembered, his presence commanding despite his unassuming demeanor. For a moment, neither spoke. The hum of machinery and distant chatter faded into background noise, leaving only the two of them suspended in time. Finally, Xyura found her voice. "I thought I might find you here," she admitted, her tone softer than she intended. "Though I wasn't certain." A flicker of amusement crossed his face. "And here I am, wondering if this is real or another dream." Her lips curved into a tentative smile. "If it's a dream, then we're sharing it." The comment hung in the air, fragile yet charged with meaning. Marcus shifted slightly, his gaze never leaving hers. "You shouldn't have come looking for me," he said after a pause, his tone grave. "It's safer for both of us if I stay in the shadows." "Safer?" Xyura arched an eyebrow, her composure hardening. "Is that why you've spent years risking your life for mine?" "Because it's safe." "It's complicated," he replied, his jaw tightening. "My reasons, they aren't what you think." "I don't care about your reasons," she shot back, surprising even herself with the vehemence in her voice. "What I care about is that you've done more for me than anyone else ever has, and I didn't even know your name until now." The admission hung between them, raw and unfiltered. Marcus looked away briefly, his expression unreadable. When he turned back, there was a new intensity in his eyes, a flicker of emotion he couldn't, or wouldn't, hide. "You deserve better than someone like me," he said quietly. "Someone who can give you answers instead of questions, stability instead of chaos." "And who decides what I deserve?" Xyura countered, stepping closer. "Do you think I haven't noticed the cracks in my perfect world? Do you think I don't see the fragility behind every crown and ceremony? You talk about giving me stability, but you're the only constant I've ever known, even when I didn't realize it." Her words struck him visibly, forcing him to take a step back as though physically pushed. "You don't understand," he muttered, shaking his head. "This isn't just about me, it's about everything I represent. My world isn't ready for yours, and yours isn't ready for mine." Then make them ready, she challenged, her voice rising slightly. Or are you afraid to try? His response was immediate, visceral. Afraid?
No.
Resigned?
Yes.
There's a difference. The tension crackled between them, palpable enough to ignite sparks. Leora studied him closely, noting the storm brewing beneath his controlled exterior. She saw the conflict warring within him, the desire to step forward clashing with the instinct to retreat. It mirrored her own struggle, the battle between duty and longing that had plagued her since discovering his identity. Before either could speak again, the door slid open, admitting a delegation of Earth officials eager to greet the visiting dignitaries. Marcus stiffened, his focus snapping back to the present. "We shouldn't be seen together," he said curtly, glancing over his shoulder. "Not yet." "Why not?" Leora demanded, refusing to let him slip away so easily. "Are you ashamed of what you've done? Of who you are?" "No," he snapped, turning back to her with a fierceness that startled her. "I'm terrified of what will happen if anyone finds out how much you mean to me." The confession hit her like a meteor strike, leaving her momentarily speechless. Before she could respond, he was gone, disappearing into the crowd as though he'd never been there. But the echo of his words lingered, reverberating through her mind long after the observation deck emptied and the summit resumed its course. For the first time, the pieces began falling into place. Not just his actions, but the depth of feeling behind them. And though uncertainty loomed large, one thing became painfully clear. Whatever path lay ahead, it would lead them both into uncharted territory, where the stakes were higher than either had imagined. As the diplomatic summit drew to a close, Marcus found himself grappling with a turmoil he hadn't anticipated. His encounter with Leora had unraveled something deep within him, exposing vulnerabilities he'd long buried beneath layers of discipline and detachment. He'd always prided himself on his ability to remain impartial, to act without letting emotions cloud his judgment. Yet now, every decision felt heavier, every choice laden with implications that stretched far beyond his own life. Her words echoed incessantly in his mind. "Are you afraid of what will happen if anyone finds out how much you mean to me?" The question gnawed at him, forcing him to confront truths he'd rather ignore. He sought refuge in solitude, retreating to a secluded corner of the orbital station where the hum of activity faded into silence. Staring out at Earth's horizon, he allowed himself to imagine a future where duty didn't dictate his every move. Where he could stand beside Leora not as a shadowy protector but as an equal, free to acknowledge the bond growing between them. But such fantasies were fleeting, chased away by harsh reality. Humanity wasn't ready for the kind of alliance Xyura represented, not when fear and mistrust still governed relations between worlds. Revealing his connection to Leora would invite scrutiny, suspicion, and potentially catastrophe. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him, threatening to crush the fragile hope blooming in his chest. Yet even as logic screamed caution, his heart rebelled. Memories of her flooded his thoughts, her resilience in the face of danger, her quiet strength masking a vulnerability few ever glimpsed. She saw him, truly saw him, in a way no one else ever had. That knowledge stirred something primal, a protective instinct that transcended reason. He realized, with startling clarity, that walking away wasn't an option, not anymore. Whether she knew it or not, she had become his anchor, grounding him in a universe that often felt overwhelmingly vast and indifferent. Meanwhile, Leora wrestled with her own inner conflict, torn between the expectations placed upon her and the undeniable pull she felt toward Marcus. Back aboard her royal cruiser, she paced the length of her quarters, replaying their conversation over and over. His confession had blindsided her, stripping away any pretense of neutrality. She understood now that his actions weren't driven solely by altruism. They stemmed from something deeper, more profound. Love. Devotion. Whatever it was, it terrified him, and thrilled her in equal measure. But embracing that connection came with risks. Public sentiment on Xyura was volatile, swayed by centuries-old prejudices against outsiders. If word spread of her ties to a human soldier, the backlash could destabilize her reign before it truly began. Worse still, it might endanger Marcus, drawing unwanted attention to a man who thrived in obscurity. The thought of putting him in harm's way sickened her, yet she couldn't deny the fierce determination building inside her. She owed him more than gratitude, she owed him honesty. And if that meant challenging tradition, defying convention, and facing the wrath of her people, then so be it. As their respective journeys continued, the distance between them felt unbearable. Messages exchanged via encrypted channels provided fleeting comfort but only served to deepen their longing. Each word carried layers of meaning, hints of affection masked by careful phrasing. They spoke of trivial matters, daily routines, shared interests, hopes for peace, but beneath the surface lay unspoken promises and unanswered questions. Would they ever find a way to bridge the gap between their worlds? Could love truly conquer the barriers separating them? Time seemed both an ally and an enemy, stretching endlessly while simultaneously slipping through their fingers. Marcus threw himself into his work, channeling his restlessness into missions that kept him occupied but left him hollow. Xyura immersed herself in governance, striving to prove her capability as a ruler while secretly plotting ways to bring their paths together again. Both knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, yet neither could resist the magnetic pull drawing them inexorably closer. Their story was far from resolved, its outcome uncertain. Yet amid the chaos and uncertainty, one truth remained steadfast. Their connection was no longer a solitary thread woven by fate but a tapestry of shared experiences, sacrifices, and dreams. Whatever lay ahead, whether triumph or tragedy, they faced it not as individuals but as partners bound by something stronger than duty or obligation. And though the universe conspired to keep them apart, their hearts refused to surrender, clinging stubbornly to the belief that love, in all its forms, was worth fighting for. As weeks turned into months, the fragile bond between Xyura and Marcus grew stronger despite the vast distance separating them. Their encrypted messages became lifelines, each word a thread stitching their worlds closer together. Yet, the challenges looming ahead seemed insurmountable. Political tensions on Xyura simmered, with whispers of dissent growing louder. Advisors warned Xyura that any alliance with Earth, let alone an emotional entanglement with a human soldier, could fracture the delicate balance of power. Marcus, too, faced mounting pressure. His superiors began questioning his frequent deployments near Xyloran territories, suspicions brewing about unauthorized involvement. He knew it was only a matter of time before his actions came under scrutiny. Still, neither could bring themselves to sever the connection they had forged. In stolen moments, they dreamed of a future where borders dissolved and hearts transcended galaxies. One fateful evening, as Xyura stood on her palace balcony gazing at the stars, she made a decision. She would no longer hide in the shadows of duty or fear. Summoning her council, she declared her intention to pursue peace with Earth, not through treaties alone, but through understanding. Her announcement sent shockwaves through the court, some applauding her boldness while others condemned her recklessness. But Xyura's resolve remained unshaken. Simultaneously, Marcus received orders to lead a high-stakes mission near Xyloran space. It was clear he'd been chosen for his familiarity with the region, though the underlying motive felt ominous. Determined to protect Xyura and the fragile hope they shared, he prepared for what might be his most dangerous assignment yet. Their paths converged once more when a sudden crisis threatened both their worlds. A rogue faction, emboldened by anti-human sentiment, launched an attack targeting Xylora's energy grid. The assault crippled vital systems, plunging the planet into chaos. Xyura immediately reached out to Earth for aid, knowing Marcus would answer the call. Against all odds, his squadron arrived just in time, their ships slicing through enemy forces with precision. Amidst the chaos, Xyura and Marcus met face to face again, this time not as rescuer and rescued but as equals united by purpose. As they fought side by side, their unspoken promise solidified: they would stand together, no matter the cost. When the dust settled, Xyura addressed her people, introducing Marcus not as a savior but as a partner, a symbol of unity and trust. The road ahead remained fraught with uncertainty. Skeptics questioned whether love could bridge such divides, while allies worked tirelessly to build bridges between their civilizations. For Xyura and Marcus, however, doubt held no power over the truth etched in their hearts. They had defied fate, broken barriers, and proven that even in the vastness of the cosmos, two souls could find each other and ignite a light bright enough to guide entire worlds. Hand in hand, they stepped forward, not as princess and soldier, but as pioneers of a new era. Together, they vowed to rewrite history, transforming fear into faith and division into harmony. And though storms still loomed on the horizon, their unwavering belief in one another illuminated the path ahead, proving that love, courage, and sacrifice could reshape the universe itself.